Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, let me know your thoughts down below. But I was thinking while I was away on vacation last week, what are some other ways that I could connect with you guys a little bit more and have you sort of participate in some of my videos. I know I've done those like answering your questions videos and you all really seem to enjoy those. And I thought it'd be fun to like share stories with each other. And since I've always been sort of interested in like unsolved mysteries and paranormal, like creepy type stuff, I thought that would be a fun first video to do, but we can always down the road share maybe like some uplifting stories, maybe some lighter, funnier content as well. So you'll have to let me know your thoughts down below, whether I should switch it up or just kind of stick with this type of theme. But I'm going to be doing my makeup. It's like a get ready with me. I'm going to talk about the products a little bit and also read some of your stories. And then at the end of the video, I'll let you know my personal creepy story, like the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, so I'm going to start with the new Halo Glow liquid filter from e.l.f. This is in the fair shade. I've really been loving this so much. It's even better to me than the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless filter because this one isn't quite as glowy and I feel like it doesn't highlight the texture on my face as much. I've actually kind of worn this as just like a glowy tinted moisturizer and it actually gives a little bit of coverage, which I love. So let's go ahead and read the first story. This one is from Erin and she said, "Hi Jen, I saw your question on YouTube and I thought I'd respond. I'm sure you're receiving many emails, but here are a few of my stories. So I'm a registered nurse. I've been bedside in hospitals for close to 20 years now. Obviously, I have stories. So many, but I'll try not to write an entire book, maybe just a few chapters. First, about 12 years ago, I was working nights. I've always worked nights, and my coworker and I saw a patient leave their room and start wandering down the corridor. Concerned, we went down the hall to safely return them back to their room, but no one was there. They had no place to go but back to us, so it was bone-chilling spooky. We searched forever for this patient, like where did she go? I still remember this memory so clearly, the image of her leaving the room and walking down the hall and never returning." Okay, now that is seriously creepy. If that ever happened to me, if I saw someone and they disappeared, I would be so scared. I don't even know if I'd go back. Then she said, "More recently, around 2 a.m., it was our downtime and many of us sat down at the nurse's station to chart. All of a sudden, we heard a female voice saying, 'Help me, help me.' We all went towards the sound, only there were no females at that end of the hall. We went into every single female room and all the patients were sleeping soundly. Creeped out, we all sat back down to talk about it and finished charting. This happened 2 more times. It was so interesting and creepy. I'm a proud oncology bone marrow transplant nurse, so unfortunately we do see more death than many hospital units. Now I just feel sorrow when I hear or see those patients that have passed. While creepy, for me it's just sad." That is really sad. I give nurses so much credit. I have a few in my family and you guys do see so much sadness, illness, death, all of that stuff. So I definitely give you guys a lot of credit. She also said at the end, "I lost an aunt whom I was extremely close with. She was like a mother to me. It was the first time experiencing loss personally, and I was just in a sad, dark place. So one night I took myself grocery shopping. I needed food and needed to get out of my own head. I was walking down the water and seltzer aisle when all of a sudden I was overcome with the smell of her perfume and a sense of her being right next to me. I cannot articulate how I just knew she was right there beside me. I just lost it right there in the grocery store, fell to my knees with so much emotion. She knew I needed her, and even in death, she showed up for me in a big way. I went out to my car, cried, thanked her, and went back in to finish shopping. It taught me that old adage that love never really dies. It just takes on different forms, and I still carry her love with me every day." And I have to say, I definitely do believe in that. I believe that sometimes our loved ones are around us. That happened to my grandmother, a very similar experience that she told me about. Her mother died when she was very young. Her mother was only 36, my grandmother was 16, and her mother had come home from work and said she didn't feel well. She went in to lie down, and my grandma started getting dinner ready. And when dinner was ready, she went in to wake her up, and she had passed of a heart attack. And I can't remember if it was that she wore a gardenia perfume or she just loved gardenias. It was something with gardenia. And my grandmother, more recently, I want to say it was like 10, 15 years ago, she was sitting in her kitchen and she said that she smelled gardenias, like super strong, and she felt her mother's presence there. She said she couldn't explain it, that just she could tell that she was there. And my grandfather walked into the room while it was happening and she said, "My mother's here." And he said, "I know." And he normally kind of would scoff at things like that. And so for him to even acknowledge it was kind of amazing. And I don't even think he knew her mother because she had died when my grandma was only 16. I think she met my grandfather after that. So for him to even know that, like, what she was talking about and feel that presence too is really interesting. So anyway, thank you so much to Erin for sending those stories. Those were awesome. And by the way, for foundation, I'm applying the Maybelline Dewy and Smooth Fit Me in the shade 120 Classic Ivory. I love this foundation because it's so lightweight, and on my dry skin, it does not cake or enhance texture. It leaves my skin a little bit glowy, and also because it's so thin, I feel like it lets the e.l.f. Halo Glow kind of shine through a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and read the next story. This is from Cam26 on YouTube. So she actually posted it on my community tab. She didn't email it to me. So she said, "I was 16 and driving home alone from a high school sporting event one winter night. I came to a poorly designed four-way stop intersection with 10 lanes in the center of town called Chicken Corner by the locals. I pulled up to the stop line, which was so far back it prevented drivers in my lane from seeing cars coming to the intersection from the right 90 degrees. I came to a full stop and was so glad there were no other cars at the intersection. I was about to drive through when I very distinctly heard a voice say, 'Wait.' I listened but sort of scoffed because nobody was there. Then all of a sudden, a car ran full speed through the stop sign and right through the intersection from the blind spot side. If I hadn't waited, I would have been sideswiped at a high rate of speed. I sat there stunned for a few seconds and then safely got home." Wow, that is so incredible. I definitely feel like, and I'm a Catholic, so I know not everybody believes in this, but I believe in guardian angels that are watching out for us. And I say a prayer to my guardian angel and those of my family members every single day to watch over us and protect us throughout the day. That is amazing, and I'm so glad that you listened to that voice, whatever it was. For my brows, I'm just applying the LA Colors Browie Wowie Skinny Brow Pencil in the shade medium. I got this at Dollar General very recently. It was only a couple of dollars. It was $2 or $3. And I feel like it can compete with the Anastasia Brow Wiz. It feels and acts almost exactly the same as that. It's really easy to draw onto your skin. It has nice grip. It's not like too waxy and it's not too stiff either. So I really like this a lot. And actually before the video, I applied my Got To Be brow gel. And this is something that I got on Amazon. I talked about it recently in a video. Absolutely love it. It has the best hold of any brow gel I've ever tried. And I used to pencil them in first and then apply this, but because my brows grow downward and I was brushing the hairs up, I found that I would put the pencil in a certain spot and then I would brush the brow hairs up and it would be off. So now I apply this, I let it dry, and then I just fill in the little gaps with the pencil afterwards. So I just found that that's how it works best for me. Okay, so let's do the next story. This is from Carrie, and she said, "When my daughter was very young, she would go into my grandma's laundry room and look up and say, 'Hi guys,' and then proceed to have conversations with no one my eyes could see. She has Down syndrome, and my grandma told me that her pure nature and innocence allowed her to see things that we couldn't. At 16, she still has a sixth sense about things." I have something to tell you about that in just a second, like a personal experience. And also another thing she said was when she was little, she had an antique jewelry box that she had accidentally locked the key in. She said her parents told her there wasn't a way to open it without damaging it, and she cried and cried about it. The next morning, though, she woke up and it was wide open. She said her parents swear they did not open it. Maybe they did, but they're sticking by their story. And she said, "I feel like I could go on and on about this kind of thing." So that's interesting. I wonder how that actually got open. But as far as like little kids and seeing things, I will never forget my son. When he was about a year old, he was in his high chair. I was feeding him dinner, and my husband was away on a business trip, so we were home alone. And all of a sudden, he kind of looks around me and starts waving, and I was like, "Who are you waving at? Like, what's going on?" And at first, I just thought he was kind of playing around. I didn't think too much of it, but he continued to keep looking around me and like he was laughing and giggling like he was playing with somebody. Needless to say, I didn't really sleep that well that night because I just had such a creeped out feeling, although I'm sure whoever he was playing with or talking to was friendly, but it definitely took me by surprise quite a bit. And another time, when he was little also, around the same age, he was just starting to talk and he couldn't speak that well, but he used to point up at the ceiling all the time in the family room and talk about an elephant. Like he would say effluent, which is how he used to say elephant. And my son has always been obsessed with animals since he was very little. And so he kept talking about this elephant on the ceiling, and my family members would always joke and say like, you know, of course he sees like animal spirits instead of people because he loves animals so much. But as he got older, we kind of debunked this one because as it turns out, I was bathing him. This was maybe like a year or more later when he could talk a little bit better. And I was bathing him in the tub, and our tub has a knob to turn the water on that looks kind of like an elephant's trunk. And he was sitting in the bath playing, and he just all of a sudden pointed at it and said, like, the elephant that looks like an elephant. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what you were talking about, because when you're sitting down in our family room, if you look up, we have a back staircase and you can see the bathroom doorway from the living room. So now I'm thinking he might not have been pointing at the ceiling and talking about elephants. He might have been pointing towards the bathroom door, talking about the elephant in the tub. So we kind of solved that one. But the time when he was like waving and laughing and talking to somebody behind me in the kitchen, yeah, I have no explanation for that one at all. For concealer, I just used the LA Colors Conceal It, and this is in the shade Fair. I also got this at Dollar General. It was like $2 to $3, and it's been one of my favorite concealers lately. It's so good. And next up for bronzer, I'm going to use the new ColourPop Super Shock Bronzer in the shade Get Sandy. I love this color. It's almost like a rosy bronze. It's perfect if you have like my skin tone with the pink undertone, because I feel like when I naturally get a tan, it always has a little bit of a pink tone to it, like almost like a sunburned effect. But if you don't have the same skin tone as I do, ColourPop does have other colors in this as well. I've just been loving the formula. It's really, really easy to blend. It dries down to a powder immediately. It's just really easy to use. And I'm going to be applying it with the BK Beauty 106 brush. Okay, so the next story is when I was young, there was a period of time that I heard doors closing in the house when no one was closing them. It sounded exactly like a door closing, the thunk of the wood, the clicking of the metal doorknob, but the only other people in the house were my parents, and every time they would be either taking naps or watching TV, anything that basically didn't include closing a door. One time I even shouted down to them, "Neither of you just closed the door, did you?" And they confirmed they indeed had not. It's a few months later and I never heard it again, but I still have no explanation for it. That is definitely creepy. I wonder what that was. By the way, that was submitted by Songs from the Heart 37 here on YouTube. The next one is from Blue Smurf 721, also on YouTube. She said, "When I was 7, my family moved into an older house and I'm convinced it was or is haunted. I always felt watched in the house. My closet door would be open in the morning when I knew I had closed it. There were weird drafts and cold spots, that kind of thing. Twice I even saw the ghost. He was a boy about my age. Both times I saw him, he was in the hallway, getting up from the ground as if he had fallen, and then he was just gone." Oh my gosh, so creepy. My parents didn't believe me. We moved out a few years later, no big deal. Years and years later, a good friend of mine happened to rent the same house, small town, it happens, and I was at her housewarming party and her daughter said something about her imaginary friend, a boy about 8, who used to live there. My friend knew what I had seen and said something to me afterwards along the lines of, "I always believed you, and you'd said even then that it was friendly. The house is definitely haunted, but it's not doing any harm, so I'm not bothered by it." Wow, I don't know if I could stay if I saw something. The house I grew up in that my parents live in, definitely, like, there were weird things that happened, which I'll probably get into as we go. I never saw anything though. I don't know what I would do if I did. I don't know if I could handle that at all. Jacqueline B on YouTube said, I was a maid at the Belhurst Castle and also the White Springs Manor. Both places had stories of hauntings, which I didn't believe until I started working there. I knew they were true because after we cleaned each room, we had to lock the door behind us. My supervisor checked our rooms and I was with her, and no way anybody could have entered. However, the beds would look like someone had laid there and certain objects were moved. I worked there about a year until I had a door slammed in my face and heard a whoosh and all the hairs on my arms went up. Yeah, I think if that happened, I probably would have been out of there too. Next up for blush, I'm going to use the Makeup Revolution Bright Light Highlighter in the shade Divine Dark Pink. So this is a great dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury Light Wand in Pinkgasm. It's very, very similar to that. Okay, so next is an email from Bridget. She said, hey there, Jen. This is my creepy story, and I swear every bit of it is true. My husband and I rented a house about 10 years ago that I swear was strange. We started to feel uneasy after we moved in, and we both thought that once we unpacked, it would start to feel like home, but it didn't. We noticed that light bulbs would blow in the house all the time, and things like the refrigerator would go out and the dishwasher. We contacted the landlord over this to get these items replaced, and he said for some reason it happens often. We asked him to get an electrician out there, and he said he's had about 5 out there, and they couldn't find anything wrong. The electric in my parents' house was kind of funky too, same kind of thing. The laundry room was off the kitchen, and every time I did laundry in that little room, I felt like I was being stared at. It creeped me out so much that I stopped doing laundry at night and would only do laundry during the day. The hallway was another weird feeling place where you would walk down the hallway, you'd feel like you were being chased by someone. My husband felt the same way every time he would walk down the hallway, so we started to keep the hall light on at night every single night because that's how much it creeped us out. Oh my gosh, I can identify with this so much because we had a hallway like that in my parents' house. I'll tell you about that in a second. She said one time we had a little get together with some friends. At the end of the night, we had a bonfire. When we were wrapping things up, I told the guests to go inside and make plates of food to go. My husband and I decided to go back outside and check on the fire, and as we were standing there, a huge, and I mean huge, UFO was hovering above us, moving slowly from left to right, and it was completely silent. My husband said no one is ever going to believe us, so I ran inside and grabbed the nearest person to the door and pulled them out to look at the UFO, and they couldn't believe what we were looking at. What? So not only is this house kind of haunted and strange things going on, but a UFO too? Then she said the last straw for us was one night I woke up laying on my side in the middle of the night, and to my left there was an old man in a striped shirt and jeans staring down at me. I obviously screamed, shaking my husband to get up because I thought there was an intruder. When my husband jumped out of bed and turned on the light, the old man disappeared. That was it for us. That would have been it for me too. We broke our lease and we moved out within 8 to 9 months. The landlord ended up selling that property a few months later because he said he couldn't keep anyone in there long enough, and it started to become a huge headache for him, so he sold the place. That is my creepy story, and I swear every bit of it is true, and that is from Bridget. Wow. I definitely would have been out of there as well. I would probably still be having nightmares. And like I was saying about the hallway, what she was talking about in my parents' house, which was built around 1900, so it's more than 100 years old. There were a lot of creepy things that happened there, but one thing in particular was the hallway. I would always get the same creeped out feeling ever since I was a kid. It was the type of house where it was like a center hall colonial. So you walk in the front door and it has a hallway that goes straight back to the kitchen. And then like on your right are steps that go up, and on the left was the doorway to the living room. So that hallway was always like a little dark because there weren't any windows in it. But that really wasn't what creeped me out about it. It just, I don't know what it was. It was just a feeling. And when I was in my teens, my cat, Buddy, he was deathly afraid of this hallway. So if he was upstairs in one of the bedrooms and he wanted to come down, his food bowl and his water were in the kitchen and his litter box. And to get there, like he would come down the steps, and rather than just go straight down the hallway to the kitchen, which was right there, he would actually cross over the hallway as fast as he could. And he would kind of like, his eyes would dart around and he would kind of slink and like go from the bottom of the steps across the hallway into the living room. Then he'd have to go all the way through the living room, all the way through the dining room, and then come out in the kitchen. And he would just constantly go around instead of going through the hallway. The only time he would go through through the hallway was if maybe we had company over, people that he wasn't familiar with, and he was like terrified of strangers. So if there were people in the living room he didn't want to see, he would go through the hallway, but he would do that little like slinking, as fast as he possibly could, his eyes darting around, and he just always looked terrified when he would go in the hall. But for the most part, he just avoided it. If it was just us at home, he would never go in there. I feel like animals definitely have a sixth sense. I mean, he also would oftentimes be sleeping on my bed, in the evening time. I'd be like doing homework or watching TV in my room, and all of a sudden he would just jump up on my bed and like stare at something in the corner up on the wall, and there'd be nothing there, but he would like start growling like deep in his throat, and it would creep me out so much because I'm like, what is he looking at? What is he staring at and growling at? And I definitely feel like animals, just like little kids, can kind of sense things that maybe we can't. So yeah, I never saw anything in my parents' house, except for once in a while. Like I'd be sitting in the living room, and in that same hallway, I would see like something dart out of the corner of my eye, like a dark shadow. And a lot of times I thought, well, maybe it's the cat. But then I'd look over and he would be like sitting over here. He'd be in the room with us. So I would always see things out of the corner of my eye, and I would bring it up to my parents and they would just kind of laugh it off like, no, no, no. And it wasn't until like more recent times that my family and I, we talk about it sometimes, and like other family members also say that they would see that out of the corner of their eye, like somebody, just a dark shadow, like just going down the hallway. But I was glad to see that I wasn't the only one that noticed something a little bit weird in that house. All right, so I'm going to do my eyes, and I'm going to be using the Moira Time to Shine palette. This is a stunning palette. You have a lot of neutrals in here, but also some greens, and since I'm wearing a green top, I figured that would be perfect. I've really been wanting to use this one on camera, and I absolutely love Moira's formula. I think it's like one of the best out there and super affordable as well. So I'm going to start with this shade right here, Just in Time. It's just like a light beige matte. All right, so this next one is from Becky. She said, "Hi Jen, one strange thing I experienced was when I was doing a ride along with a dear friend who is a tribal police officer on the reservation where I grew up. Suffice it to say that it has more than its fair share of paranormal activity. Anyway, we were dispatched to check on a report of an abandoned vehicle. They get a lot of ghost car sightings in that area, so we assumed that that was what the person had seen." I kind of can't do my eyeshadow and read at the same time. All right, so I'll just read it. So there was a real abandoned car there, but after she investigated and we left there, we saw two perfectly aligned rows of what looked to be yard lights, about 10 in each row, on a hill where there are no power lines or houses. We were bored, so we decided to check it out. You guys are brave. I don't know that I would have done that, but she said we were about a quarter mile away when the lights completely disappeared. Poof, gone. She turned around in an intersection where the majority of the ghost car sightings have taken place over the years. Immediately, a thick mist enveloped the entire patrol car for just a few seconds before it disappeared. This was a perfectly clear night with nary a cloud in the sky. At that point, we decided that if something defies all logic, that's all right, and we headed back to the office. That is definitely a creepy experience for sure. I can't say that I've really seen anything like outside, except for once when I was at the beach and my brother and I saw something over the ocean. It was a light that looked like a light on a plane, but then it kind of like disappeared. And then it came back, and then it disappeared, like it was moving really fast away from us, and then all of a sudden it would be back. And that was kind of a strange thing, but I don't know. We were also kind of near an Air Force base, so I don't know, like sometimes I feel like they could be testing things that we don't really know about, and so what I saw could have just been something like that, but what Becky saw definitely would make me question things a bit. Next, I'm just going to pick up this matte green shade called Carefree and just put this in my outer corner. All right, so the next story is from Melissa, and her handle on her social media is at GetReadyWithMelOfficial. And she said, "I just saw your question on YouTube and figured I'd share my experience as it is definitely scary and creepy, and to this day, I don't know what it was." She said, "When I was growing up, I had several friends in my neighborhood that were related to each other, and I was very close with them. Their homes were like second homes for me, and I even went with them to sleepovers at their grandma's house and attended many family functions with them." She said, "The summer when I was 12, I went with them to stay over at their grandma's for the weekend. She had a fully finished basement with several couches, and that's where we normally slept. I had been there many times as that was where holiday parties were usually held. So when we got there, we staked out our couches and I picked the couch in front of the basement stairs." I need to explain the stairwell quickly for the rest of the story to make sense. There was a short set of stairs that went up to the landing and a side door that led out of the basement on the left, or on the right if you're going down. Then the stairs turned to the right as you're going up and led to the basement door. But this section of the stairs was hidden from view from the basement by a wall, so you couldn't see anyone until they reached the landing. So hopefully that makes sense. I had chosen the couch in front of the stairs because I brought a book with me that I wanted to finish, and I knew that I could stay up and read the book by the stairwell light without disturbing anyone else. So our day went by normally and we played and had fun. When it was time to go to bed, all of my friends got comfortable in their spots and soon fell asleep. I stayed up reading. I don't know how long it was going on, but a little after 1 a.m. I became aware of the sound of footsteps running up and down the basement stairs. I quickly dismissed it as being one of the dogs my friend's grandma had, because she had 2 of them. So I just continued reading. A little after 2 a.m., I finished the book and decided to get comfortable and try to sleep. But the footsteps were still going. Down the stairs, pause, up the stairs, pause, down the stairs, pause, up the stairs, pause. It was making it pretty difficult to get to sleep, and I was on the verge of getting up to let the dogs out into the yard when I remembered that they actually weren't in the house because they had been let out for the night earlier. Immediately, I felt wide awake. I kept looking back toward the stairwell whenever I heard the footsteps, but they never actually came down to the landing. I tried to tell myself it was either my friend's grandma or grandpa, but it didn't really make sense for them to be running up and down the stairs again and again. I laid there with my head ducked down, listening to the footsteps for several more minutes until the landing creaked and the footsteps stopped. I didn't look immediately because I was pretty scared by this point because it was all very strange. Honestly, I don't know if I would have been able to look either. This is illuminated in the light of the stairway with their head turned to the side, so their body was facing me, but the head was facing the side door, was my friend, Dee. I won't disclose their name. Dee was wearing their signature low ponytail, but she was wearing the pajamas I had watched her decide to leave at home when she was packing, which was odd. But the creepiest part is, when I looked over to where Dee was sleeping on the couch, she was still there. All right, that's creepy. She said I immediately looked back to the stairwell and just stared like I was frozen. Whatever was standing on the stairwell landing wasn't my friend, and the fact that it looked like my friend suddenly made it feel very menacing. I don't know if I made a noise or something, but whatever it was, it suddenly turned its head and looked at me, and it looked exactly like my friend except for the eyes. They were a strange amber gold-like color, and then its eyes widened like it was scared or in pain, and then it turned and ran back up the stairs. I sat there for a few more minutes, afraid to move. It felt like it wanted me to chase after it up the stairs, and I was terrified that it would come after me if I moved. But eventually I got up and made my way over to my friends. I thought that they'd think I was crazy, so I just laid down on the floor between 2 of the couches and laid awake for most of the night. The running footsteps eventually started again and didn't stop until dawn. I don't think I would ever set foot in this house again, to be honest with you. She said, when my friends woke up, I ended up telling them what happened. They thought I was just trying to scare them, but then the next night I laid down as close to my friends as I could and fell asleep before everyone else because I was exhausted. When I woke up in the morning, 2 of my friends were sitting up wide-eyed, looking tired. I asked them what was wrong, and they told me they heard someone running up and down the basement stairs all night. And that's my experience. I really don't know what it was, and honestly, I try not to think about it too often, but I remember it vividly. It was one of the most terrifying moments I had ever experienced. Wow, so first of all, that is absolutely terrifying, and it's interesting too because of the stairs thing. I feel like as I'm reading all of your stories, they're bringing up things that happened to me or family members of mine, and they're so similar, and that kind of freaks me out because of the similarity of the experiences. So this didn't happen to me, but actually happened to my brother, and he was at my uncle's house. My uncle lives in upstate New York near the Canadian border on a farm, so it's very desolate there. It's like hundreds of acres with his huge house right in the middle of everything. It's like this old brick house, I think built in the 1800s, and they've always had some really creepy things going on there. My uncle has told us numerous times that it's haunted. My cousin used to tell us when we'd go to visit that she had seen ghosts there. My brother had gone up to visit once in the fall, and he went by himself, and my other uncle had gone up to visit as well. And one afternoon, my brother said he was sitting in the kitchen and my uncles were outside. So he was the only person in the house at the time. All of a sudden, like the steps were on the other side of the kitchen wall. And he said he heard footsteps, like heavy boots clomping down the stairs. And he said it was unmistakable. It wasn't just like, oh, there were little creaks coming from the stairs. He said it was like heavy footsteps. And he was like, who is in the house? He thought maybe one of them had come in through the back door or something. And he kind of looked out the window and they were out in the field. He could see both of my uncles outside. And then he thought, what about the dog? And he looked and the dog was laying on the kitchen floor near him. So there was nobody else it could have been. The footsteps would come down to the bottom. And he said like any second he thought somebody was going to turn the corner, but they never did. And then the steps would just go back up. And then they would go back down again. And he said each time it would just stop when it got to the bottom. And whatever it was would not turn the corner to come into the kitchen. He said he's never been that scared in his entire life. And when he told my uncle about it when he came in, he's like, oh yeah, that's just so-and-so. He built the house. And then he told my brother about how he's like actually seen him before. He paces around the upstairs hallway. Like he's actually like seen this guy before. So yeah, my brother said that night he just kind of slept with like the covers pulled up. And he said he did shut his door at night and in the morning it was open like this much. And he doesn't know who opened the door. So yeah, I haven't been back there since this happened, and this was probably like a good 10 years ago. We slept there all the time when I was a little kid, and I admit sometimes when I was in the house, I did feel a little creeped out, especially if I was in a room alone. But I thought that was interesting, the connection with the stairs and just somebody going up and down, up and down. All right, so for my lid, I'm just applying this shade All Good over here, which is like a shimmery light green color. And this next story is from Daphne. She said, hi, Jen. I hope you're doing well. Here's my spooky story. One day I was sleeping in my room. Me and my little brother used to sleep in the same room in twin beds. Same here. He had a toy truck that had a siren. The only way the siren would sound was by pressing the button hard. But if you left your finger on the button, after a few seconds, it would stop making the sound. So that night while we were asleep, the truck started to go off and it wouldn't stop. Me, all confused, turned the light on and immediately the siren stopped. I was like 12 years old, so I didn't think too much of it, and I turned the light off and me and my brother went back to sleep. After 5 minutes, the truck started making the sound again. I got annoyed and turned on the light, and immediately it stopped again. This time I grabbed the truck and shook it a few times to see if the button was stuck or something, but nothing seemed off, so I put it back down and turned off the lights again. After a couple of minutes, it started making the sound again, and this time my little brother turned the light on and grabbed the truck and took the batteries out. It turned off and he put it down and we went back to sleep. Well, a few minutes later, it started again. Even without batteries, I would have freaked. We were so aggravated that we ripped off the cables and put the darn truck in the hallway outside of our room, and this time the truck kept making the sound without stopping for almost 15 minutes until it eventually stopped. We weren't even scared, we were just pissed because we wanted to sleep, and we didn't even comprehend at the time that the situation was spooky. The next day was when we realized that what happened was actually scary, and we got scared of the toy truck and threw it in the backyard. It was left outside for days. It rained and all, and one day my older sister was walking in the yard and heard the truck turn on again by itself without batteries, without cables. She, of course, knew about what happened to us, so she started running home screaming. We threw the truck in the trash and never saw it again. That was like 30 years ago, and I still remember that crazy night. I have so much weird stuff that happened to me in that house in Puerto Rico, including one time being slapped in the face when I was waking up from a nap. Of course, I was alone in my room when that happened, so yeah, it was spooky. But I wanted to tell you the truck story because it sounds spooky, but not so bad. LOL. Wow. So seriously, I'm like getting chills from reading all of your stories. And again, I did have something kind of similar to that happen. I remember talking about this on my Instagram stories a couple of years ago. It hasn't happened now in a while, but this is like a Christmas ornament that we have. Funny enough, it's a Ghostbusters Christmas ornament of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And we had it for years and years. And one Christmas, I want to say this was like 2018, 2019, we took out the Christmas ornaments, put them on the tree. And then later that night, I woke up to the sound of this thing going off, and it plays the Ghostbusters theme song. And because the house was so quiet, it was super loud and it woke me up immediately. And I was like, what is that? My husband's like, oh, it's just that ornament. And I'm like, but why is it playing? Like, you have to press a button to make it go. And he's like, I don't know, sometimes these things malfunction, whatever. And we kind of laughed about it, like how ironic it was that it was the Ghostbusters ornament going off by itself. but it continued to happen, and it would only happen in the middle of the night. It didn't happen all day. It was just when we went to sleep, this thing would be going off at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever. It started to really creep me out. We never figured out what was wrong with it, and after that winter, we put it away, and the next winter we took it out. It still works. Like if you press the button, it plays, but it never has gone off by itself again. Just that one holiday season, it did that. And like I said, we've owned this thing for probably close to 10 years now. And that was the only Christmas that it ever did that. So I thought that was kind of weird. All right, so next I'm going to use the Micro Tip liquid liner from Moira, and I'm just going to do this quickly off camera because I can't really talk and do my eyeliner at the same time. So I'll be right back. All right, so for mascara, I'm going to be using this new Blink Lash Extension Tubing Mascara. I got this at Sephora recently, and I couldn't wait to try it. I've just been loving tubing mascaras. I've been trying out all the ones that I can find because they don't smudge or flake, and they stay put all day. They're super easy to remove at night. So I really wanted to try this one. I don't know if it's actually new or if it's just new at Sephora, but it just showed up there recently. So let's give it a go. And I guess because I'm kind of getting to the end of doing my makeup, I'll tell you guys my story now. So my story is something that I and my family cannot explain. And as you've seen kind of throughout this video, the house that I grew up in, like a lot of weird stuff happened. But this involved my TV that was in my room. So I had this TV for many years. I got it when I was in my teens, and this story happened when I was in my 20s. And I would watch TV at night before I went to sleep, and I would get in bed, I would put it on a sleep timer for either like 30 minutes or an hour because I didn't want to like fall asleep and then have the TV be on all night. So it would just shut off automatically at any given time. And I used to watch Nick at Night, so they had like the Golden Girls on or Who's the Boss, basically very lighthearted type stuff. So one night, like usual, I put the sleep timer on for 30 minutes and I was really tired, so I figured I was going to go to sleep really quickly. And I went to sleep. And I should explain about this TV. It wasn't a flat screen like they have now. This was back in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. So it was one of those big tube TVs that had the big back, and the top of the TV was wide. It was probably like this wide, like a foot. And I had just left my job for a different one, and my boss had given me flowers, like as a congratulations. And so I had put the flowers in a vase with some water, and I put them on top of the TV. That has importance later in the story. But anyway, I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning and I wanted to put the TV on while I was getting ready for work. I went to turn on the TV, and when I pressed the button on the remote, nothing happened. So I just figured the batteries in the remote were dead. And I went over to the TV just to turn it on manually, because back then, like, you could just push the power button on the TV itself and turn it on. And it didn't work either. So I was like, what the heck? Now I should mention that my sisters had already gone to school. This was like 9 a.m. My mom was the only one home. My dad had already gone to work as well. And my door was closed all night, so nobody was in or out. And then I'm thinking like maybe the power went out, but then I could hear my mom vacuuming downstairs. So that thought was immediately like, okay, no, it can't be that. She's vacuuming, there is power. So I went over to the TV, and as I was going over there, like all these thoughts are going through my head, like what could this be? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's unplugged. And as I'm walking over, I look and I see that the plug is not in the wall. So then the thought runs through my head, maybe it wasn't in the outlet all the way, maybe my cat knocked it out. But again, I'm like, no, my door was shut all night, my cat wasn't in here. So I'm looking back there for this plug, and I don't even see the cord. And at this point, my mom had come up the stairs and she had knocked on my door to tell me something or whatever. And I opened the door and I'm like, Mom, my TV somehow got unplugged in the middle of the night and I don't see the cord anywhere. And she's like, what? And we're looking at the back, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, look, the cord is sticking out like from under the TV. And I'm thinking, how the heck did this happen? So like I took the flowers in the vase off the TV, then I picked it up and she's like, yeah. And she kind of reached under and she said, it's all like coiled around underneath, and the TV was sitting on top of the cord. And I was like, how can this be? Like, I didn't even believe what I was seeing, because I watched it the night before. I was alone in my room with the door closed. I was sleeping the whole time. I didn't touch it. So I kind of told her the story. I'm like, it wasn't working. It was last night. Now it's not. So I kind of ran through the whole story with her. I told her what happened, and she's like, well, you must have unplugged it. And I said, Mom, I didn't. I fell asleep with it on. And she's like, no, like she didn't really believe me at the time. So anyway, I take the cord out, I plug it back into the wall, I go to turn the TV on, and it's just dead. It's fried. It doesn't work anymore. So Then my mom is telling me, well, maybe like while it was still on, when you were like half asleep, maybe it was acting strangely and you got up and like unplugged it like half asleep and you just don't remember, which I guess could be possible. But then how did I get the cord tucked underneath the TV? And first of all, why would I do that? But then how did I get it tucked underneath? Like I would have had to lift up the TV, tuck the cord underneath it, and move those flowers too, like all in my sleep. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. Like I've run through so many scenarios in my head of what could have done this, and I still to this day have a hard time even believing that it happened because it was like the weirdest thing. So I don't know. And nobody that I've told that story to can figure out exactly what could have happened either. I mean, the only logical explanation is that I did it somehow in my sleep. But the other strange thing too is that when I was older, like when my son was born, he was a baby, my husband went on a work trip to Europe and he was gone for like 2 weeks. And my parents were like, you know, why don't you come over, spend a couple days with us so you're not alone with the baby? So I said, okay. And I went over there and they put me in the guest room, which was my brother's old room at the time. And they had a TV in there. And I did the exact same thing. I put it on a sleep timer. I went to sleep, woke up in the morning. The TV was dead. It wasn't unplugged or anything like the last time, but it just didn't work. And I remember going to get my dad and he was like, what is it with you and the TVs? You just broke another one. I don't know if it was coincidence or what, but I find it very strange that it happened to me twice and everybody else in that house has a TV in their room. There's a TV in the kitchen, living room. It's never happened to anybody else, just me. So it's one of those like unexplained things that I don't know. All right, so this mascara gave me pretty decent length and volume, but I think I actually like the LA Colors Biggie Lash one even a little bit more, and I got this at Dollar General as well. I've just been loving LA Colors lately. I think my lashes just look even a little bit bigger with this, and this one's like $4 or $5, but I'll have to use this one a few more times and maybe see if it gets better over time because sometimes mascaras do that. And then the last product I have is from NYX. This is their new This Is Milky Gloss, and it's in the shade Ube Milkshake. I saw these at Ulta the other day and they looked really cool. And this color is beautiful. It's like a cool toned mauvey pink. It's a really nice gloss too. It's kind of opaque for a gloss. It has a lot of color to it and it's super smooth. It's not even sticky in the slightest bit. It feels kind of more like a liquid lip balm than a gloss. And do you know what this smells exactly like? Do you remember those Bonnie Bell chapsticks from when we were little kids? It smells exactly like the Dr. Pepper one, like identical. It's totally bringing me back to like 3rd grade right now. It's actually kind of a strong scent. I'm not entirely sure I love it, but I'll have to kind of wear it and see what I think over time. It's just a little bit more perfumey than I normally would like. But all right, guys, so hair's done. Here's the final look. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it so much. I hope you all enjoyed this video. This was so much fun to read about all your experiences and share a few of mine as well. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please let me know down in the comments below. And also, if you're not subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go, especially if you like makeup content, particularly drugstore makeup and dupes, and of course story times like this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care. Bye.